The wind carried the scent of rain and smoke across the barren plains. Eli Turner rode slow, the reins loose in his hand, his old horse tired from miles of silence. The ranch lay far behind him now, a lonely stretch of land where his little girl waited by the window every night, hoping her papa would come back with someone to keep her from crying herself to sleep. Eli had buried his wife 2 winters ago, and the house had never stopped feeling empty since. Folks said he'd grown cold, but they didn't see the way he held that child when no one was looking. He wasn't riding for cattle this time, he was riding for hope. When he reached the edge of the trading post, the place was nearly deserted. A storm was rolling in from the mountains, the kind that turned dust to mud and hearts to fear. That's when he saw them. 3 Apache women huddled near the corral, their hands bound, their faces hidden under worn shawls. A merchant barked prices like he was selling horses. $6 each, he shouted, his voice sharp against the wind. They'll work, cook, clean, whatever you need. Eli froze in the saddle, jaw tightening. He hated this kind of thing, the cruelty of men who thought lives had a price. But he saw the youngest one glance up, scared, hungry, proud even in her fear, and something inside him broke. He dismounted without a word and walked straight to the trader. "Untie them," he said quietly. The man sneered. "You buying or preaching, mister?" Eli pulled out $6, every coin he had left. "They're coming with me," he said. The merchant laughed. "Suit yourself. Don't say I didn't warn you. They don't speak English, and they sure don't take kindly to white men." Eli didn't answer. He handed over the coins, cut the ropes, and offered his hat to the oldest woman. "You're free now," he said softly. "Come with me. You'll have food, water, and a roof." The 3 looked at each other, uncertain. Freedom was a word that didn't mean much anymore. But when the thunder cracked above them, they followed, slowly, silently. Eli helped them onto his wagon and turned his horse toward the open plain. As the first drops of rain fell, he glanced back. His daughter's face flashed in his mind, the way she whispered, "Papa, I miss Mama." He tightened his grip on the reins and murmured under his breath, "Maybe now, sweetheart. Maybe now we'll all have someone to call family again." Behind him, the 3 women sat close together, the storm washing away the dust and the pain. None of them knew where they were going, but for the first time in a long while, the road ahead didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a chance. The rain followed them for miles, washing the dust from the world. By the time Eli Turner reached his ranch, the wagon wheels were heavy with mud, and night had fallen. The cabin lights glowed faintly through the mist, warm and trembling, like a single heartbeat in the dark. Inside, his daughter Emma waited by the fire, clutching her worn-out doll. When she heard the wagon, she ran to the door, barefoot, eyes wide. "Papa!" she cried, throwing herself into his arms. Eli held her tight, his coat still wet, his heart aching with the weight of all the miles behind him. "Easy now, sweetheart," he whispered. "I brought some folks who need a place to stay." Emma peeked past him, curious. 3 women stood by the wagon, silent and soaked. Their faces were wary, their hands folded in front of them. The oldest carried herself with quiet dignity, the youngest kept her head low, and the one in the middle watched everything, calm, steady, unreadable. Eli cleared his throat softly. "They'll be staying here a while. We'll make room." The women followed him inside. The little cabin felt small with so many people, but Maria, the eldest, immediately began helping, setting wet shawls by the fire to dry. The youngest, Naya, knelt to help Emma's doll that had fallen, fixing it gently, her lips curving into a faint smile. Emma smiled back shyly. In that tiny gesture, something invisible began to heal. Later that night, as the fire crackled low, Eli sat by the window watching the rain fade into the hills. He wasn't sure what he'd brought home. 3 strangers with stories carved in scars and silence, but he felt peace for the first time in years. The women had eaten little, only what Emma insisted on sharing. When they finally slept, huddled together on the floor, with blankets he'd found in the attic, Eli whispered to himself, maybe the Lord knew we all needed saving. The days that followed moved gentle and strange. The women helped without being asked, tending the garden, fetching water, caring for Emma while Eli worked the fields. They spoke in soft Apache words, laughing quietly among themselves. Emma started picking up bits of their language, pointing to the sky, saying Koyanis, and giggling when they nodded. Every night, Eli would watch them by the fire. 3 women who had known hunger and cruelty and still found kindness to give. One evening, Maria approached him as the sun melted behind the hills. "You good man," she said slowly in broken English. "You no hurt. You help." Eli looked down humbly. "No, ma'am. I just did what was right." She nodded, her eyes tired but grateful. Right is hard to find. As twilight deepened, Emma tugged her father's sleeve. "Papa," she whispered, "can they stay forever?" He looked at her, then at the 3 women sitting quietly near the firelight. His heart answered before his mouth could. "As long as they need, sweetheart. As long as they need." The plains outside were silent, the stars waking one by one. Inside that small cabin, 5 souls, once strangers, now bound by mercy, began to feel what home was supposed to mean. The next weeks brought color back to the ranch. Grass pushed through the cracked soil, the hens began laying again, and laughter, quiet, hesitant laughter, filled the evenings. Eli repaired fences, while Maria and the others planted beans in the garden Emma called the Women's Field. Life had begun to look like hope. Then one morning, dust rose on the horizon. Too much for a herd, too fast for travelers. Eli stepped onto the porch, eyes narrowing. 3 riders, armed and loud, galloped toward the house. Rustlers. He'd crossed paths with men like them before. The kind who thought a ranch without men to guard it was theirs for the taking. He called to the women in Apache, the few words he'd learned: inside, hide. But Maria shook her head. "We stay. We help." Before he could protest, she and the younger 2 slipped into motion. Naya ran to pull Emma under the table, while Tala grabbed Eli's spare rifle and checked the chamber like someone who'd held one before. Eli's pulse jumped. These women had lived through raids. They knew how fear smelled. The riders stopped a few yards from the gate. "Morning, Turner," their leader shouted. "Heard you took in company. Thought we'd come say hello." His grin was a sneer beneath the brim of his hat. Eli stepped down from the porch, shotgun resting on his shoulder. "You've said it. Now keep riding." The man's smile thinned. "We're thirsty. Maybe hungry. Maybe we'll take a look around." He nudged his horse forward, then froze when a single gunshot cracked the air. A tin can exploded off the fence post beside his boot. He turned. The sound had come from the cabin window where Tala stood, rifle steady, eyes cold as the desert stone. "Next one's not for the can," she said quietly. The men cursed, backing their horses. "You've made friends with savages," Turner one spat. Eli didn't flinch. "Friends?" "No family." He lifted his shotgun, the hammer cocking loud. "Now ride before the next storm catches you." They did. The thunder of hooves faded across the plain. When the silence finally settled, Eli let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. Maria stepped out, her hands trembling slightly. "They go," he nodded. "Because of you." She smiled faintly. "Because we together." Inside, Emma ran to her father. "Papa, did we win?" He knelt, pulling her close. "We stood our ground, little one. That's enough." That night the cabin glowed brighter than the fire alone could explain. They ate what little they had, beans, bread, peace, and for the first time laughter came easy. Eli looked around the table, at faces that had once been strangers, and said softly, "Maybe the Lord didn't just send me mothers for my girl. Maybe he sent us all a reason to start over." Outside, the wind that had carried fear now carried only the smell of rain and cedar. The plains were quiet again, but inside that small house, something stronger than blood had begun to take root.